We're in the library of the Shevchenko Museum in Toronto, Canada, and the collection, as you can see, is a very large collection. It's one of the best Shevchenko libraries, certainly in the Western world, and it also has something like 125 or so kobzars, that is the complete poetry of Taras Shevchenko in print. We do have one book, at least, that was published when Shevchenko was still alive in 1860. So this collection is a very valuable collection of Taras Shevchenko. The museum library has provided information to many people that are interested in the life and times of Taras Shevchenko. I'm Andrew Grigorovich, president of the Shevchenko Museum here in Toronto, Canada. Our museum was originally founded in 1952, but a fire destroyed the museum, and this particular location inside of Toronto was established in 1995. So it's been functioning for 15 years. Our museum is primarily about the great poet and talented artist Taras Shevchenko, who lived from March 9th, 1814 to March 10th, 1861. So he was 47 years old. He suffered in the Russian Empire, which at that point ruled Ukraine, and was arrested by the Russian police at least 3 times, and exiled by the Tsar of Russia to Siberia as a common soldier, which also broke his health. In our exhibit here we have a great many of the kobzars, that is the book of poetry, collected book of poetry of Taras Shevchenko. Kobzar is a minstrel in English, and that's basically what Shevchenko was. Shevchenko was unusual in that he helped to establish the literary language of Ukraine, just as Dante formed the Italian language and Shakespeare did the English language. So the 3 of them contributed to the development of their literary languages, and of course Shevchenko had a great influence on the literary language of Ukraine. Here we have examples of the very first kobzar of Taras Shevchenko, published in 1840 in St. Petersburg, the Russian capital at that point. And we also have a collection of some of the kobzars here. We have a total, I believe it's about 125 or 130 kobzars of Taras Shevchenko. One interesting thing about Shevchenko is that he has a tremendous number of monuments around the world. According to Halchenko, the director of the Shevchenko Museum in Kyiv, I was told that there are over 600 monuments to Shevchenko around the world. In Paris, in the United States, Washington, D.C., in Canada, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and in many other countries around the world we do have the statues of Taras Shevchenko. Here we have a famous portrait, a self-portrait of Taras Shevchenko, which he painted in 1840, which is the same year as his book of poetry came out. By profession, Shevchenko was actually not a poet, he was an artist by profession, and he was a genius both in poetry and in painting. This particular self-portrait was created the same year as his first book of poetry, the Kobzar, was published in 1840. Next to Shevchenko here we have a painting by him, which is Katerina, which is one of his stories about a maiden who was became pregnant and was abandoned by her lover. It's one of the great paintings of Taras Shevchenko, and it represents in a very concrete way his talent and his genius as an artist. And we have in the next room a very important collection. On this wall we have the works of Taras Shevchenko. Ira Aldrich was a very famous Shakespeare tragedian. He was responsible for developing in Shevchenko a tremendous friendship between the 2 of them, although he didn't speak Ukrainian and Shevchenko didn't speak English, but they were friends. Shevchenko's self-portrait here is a copy actually of a photograph, and here we have the most valuable item in our exhibit, which is the death mask of Taras Shevchenko, probably done on March 15 of 1861, the day after he died. I was in the studio of Taras Shevchenko in St. Petersburg. It's in the Academy of Arts, and it's normally closed. I was there in 1989, and it has a stairway where Shevchenko died in his studio in St. Petersburg. Here we have a portrait of Shevchenko. There's about a dozen photograph portraits of Shevchenko. He came at a time when just photography was starting. And in the corner here we have a Russian army uniform that he would have worn. This is a replica of the uniform that Shevchenko would have had for when he was 10 years in exile in Siberia. And this was used in the film Taras Shevchenko by Bondarchuk, who was a prominent actor, and the film is called Taras Shevchenko. And here are other illustrations of Shevchenko's work. This is in exile in a Kazakh boy in the hallway. These are copies of the originals, which are in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital city. His talent as a watercolor artist was quite substantial. And on this wall we have the ceramics, the woodwork, and of course this unusual portrait of Taras Shevchenko, which is actually not a painting but an embroidery. It's created out of embroidery and is an excellent piece of work. We are in the art gallery of the Shevchenko Museum in Toronto, and on this wall here we have the works of Taras Shevchenko, watercolors across the way. This particular one, Shevchenko won a silver medal for this particular work here, which is Fortune Teller. And all of the other works are his work as well in watercolors. We also do have a single oil painting of his here, which is the family, a village family. Next to it, we have a selection of his self-portraits. Taras Shevchenko painted about a dozen or so self-portraits, and there's about a dozen photographs also of Taras Shevchenko. And these give an idea of the variety of his work, pen and ink and paintings as well. He was forbidden by the Russian Tsar to either write poetry or to paint when he was in exile, but he ignored the Tsar's command, and he did continue to write poetry and to paint. One other interesting thing here is the collection that we have of postage stamps of Taras Shevchenko, and they indicate the tremendous world importance of him as a figure of Ukraine. This collection was created by a fellow by the name of Ingrid Kuzic in the United States, and I was instrumental in bringing it here to the museum. I think that it's an excellent example of Shevchenko's world influence. I think that's a very important point for us to make, in addition to the portrait here and another portrait of Shevchenko, that he was a world poet rather than just a Ukrainian poet, and I think that that's something that could be appreciated better if he was better known than he is. The Shevchenko Museum here attempts to promote the interest and the knowledge of Taras Shevchenko. We're beside the head of a monument that was in Oakville, Palermo, Oakville, for a good half century, from 1951, when it was unveiled, and it was unfortunately stolen much later, and only the head has survived. What is very important, though, is that this museum, the only one in the Western world, in the Americas, depends on donations rather than support from the government. We do not get any kind of government support. We would appreciate it if you've enjoyed the show and if you appreciate Taras Shevchenko, to consider a donation to our museum, because it will help us, since we get no grants from the government or any other major agencies. I hope that you have enjoyed the visit to the Shevchenko Museum. We've given you a tour of our treasures, and our art, and I hope that it has been of interest to you. If you are ever in Toronto, Canada, please come and visit us. We are open from 10 to 4, Monday to Friday, and we're located on Bloor Street West in Toronto at 1614.